All right. Hi. Hello, everyone. My name is Ofili, and I'm going to talk a little bit about building your AWS infrastructure with Terraform. So a little bit about what I'm going to do today. I'm going to introduce a bit more about myself, how I got here, have a brief survey of Terraform, what it is, what you can do with it. We will go through an example, which is going to be the bulk of the talk, and then I'll give some tips, some things I've learned working with it over the past year, and then any questions, comments. And for the comment section, I would like other people who have some experience with Terraform to share like what they do, the kind of stuff they do, some things they've experienced that they think would be helpful to other people. So yeah, let's get right into it. Like I said, my name is Ofili. I am a DevOps engineer at StockX right now. Prior to that, I was a backend services engineer at StockX, and as the team grew, we saw a need for a more focused DevOps team to work on infrastructure and operations and like deployments and that kind of stuff. And so I kind of volunteered to do that, and it's been exciting. I've been doing that for about 9 months. Yeah, so that's as much about me. Yeah. So I'll start with a quote from the Terraform book, like stating what Terraform is. Terraform is a infrastructure as code tool for building and managing infrastructure efficiently and elegantly. Terraform provides declarative execution plans for building and running applications and infrastructure. That's a good book, by the way, and I recommend anyone who's trying to learn more about Terraform or trying to use it extensively to read that book. So basically, Terraform is infrastructure as code, and basically what that means is it's a way of using code to state what you want at like the state you want your infrastructure to be in, and it differs a little bit from other configuration tools like Puppet or Chef, in that it's focused more on creating the hardware than it is on like configuring operating systems or applications, which is like more of the role of these other tools. It is declarative, and what that means is that rather than stating, okay, this is the change I want to make to my infrastructure, you're stating this is the state, this is what I want my infrastructure to look like, and then based on that, it like makes those transitions, and so like it's that is cool because you basically have that as that your code at any point is a source of truth or a picture of what that infrastructure is at that certain time, and it is efficient, or it can be unless you like fuck shit up. So yeah, that's basically briefly what Terraform is. And so like I said, the bulk of this talk is going to be going through a short example, and this is very similar to something we had to do very recently at StockX. So we needed a sneaker blog, a sneaker WordPress blog. All the code was there for the blog, but we wanted it to be able to scale, so we decided to use Elastic Beanstalk, and they asked for MySQL database, and so we think what was the best way to build that, and we were already using Terraform for like a lot of other things, so we decided to go ahead and use Terraform, and so the things we needed, like the database, the Elastic Beanstalk application, and the Elastic Beanstalk environment, and all this would obviously need like a VPC and the subnets and all that kind of good stuff, and so here I have the first thing we needed to do was like create the initial state for a project. So here is like the main file, which is where it declares what profile we're using, what AWS profile, which reads based on the AWS configuration that you set and your default region. And then the backend is basically where the current state of your infrastructure is stored on the like in the cloud. So it's basically an S3 bucket, and based on each time you make changes to your infrastructure, it stores those in that bucket with that key. And so the first thing we needed to do was add the stuff to create the VPC and the subnets. So what the first thing does there is it creates a VPC with that IP block, and creates an internet gateway and creates route tables down here that basically allow access into that VPC through that internet gateway. And then I created 6 subnets, each for each of the regions, for each of the zones, availability zones within US East 1. And then a route table association for each of them. And then I created a security group that basically allows access to port 80, port 443, and access for everything within that security group to talk to itself, what the self-true there is basically saying everything within that security group can talk to anything else within that security group. And so this is like the base layer of like what we need to actually begin to create the resources for our blog. And so and now I added another file, which is a sneakers blog file. So here we have a subnet group, which is basically saying all the subnets that are in that zone are the ones that we're going to use for this database. And then here that declares like the database, the different properties of the database that we're trying to create. You can set your engine type, which is MySQL, Postgres, whatever, the version, what you want, like snapshots, final snapshots to be named, your passwords. There are obviously better ways of managing passwords than putting it right there, but yeah. And so below that we have a Beanstalk application and a Beanstalk environment. The Beanstalk environment is basically where the WordPress app is gonna live, and so that's the most interesting part. So you name it, and you connect it to the application, and you set these settings, which state what VPC the environment is going to be in, the subnet, the auto scaling configuration. So like what kind of EC2 instance it would create as it scales, what security group it should be in, and if it should be public. And then the solution stack name is what kind of like software should be running on those boxes when you create them. And so here for WordPress app, I have PHP 7 running on Linux. And so this, if we run this, like it's best practice to run a Terraform plan before you run a Terraform apply, but I'm just gonna do it, and it would always ask you anyway whether you want to run it, whether everything looks good or looks like what you're expecting. So we have the database, the subnet groups, and all the like resources that we're trying to we're trying to create here. So if I say yes, it takes it begins like configure this stuff. And so if we go into the AWS console, as these resources are created, no, that's not what I wanted. Yeah, Elastic messed up. So as you can see, it's beginning to create these resources. So this is the sneakers blog environment that it's currently creating, and that process takes a while, but yeah, that's basically it. And so this is good, and this is fine, and this is cool. It's you have this code basically states, okay, it basically states what your infrastructure currently is for this blog. But the next thing I would like to think about is basically what if we need another blog with similar infrastructure, we want, let's say, a handbag blog. Our client also wants a handbag blog, which for where I work is not too far fetched. The one way to do it is you just take everything that's in here, copy and paste it, and change the variables. But most people that have worked in software know that that is against the drive principle or whatever, and that's not the best way to do it. And so that's where something called modules come into play. And so this is still doing, it takes its time. So basically, a module is like a bit of Terraform code that is created in such a way that it can be used in it can be invoked in different instances. So basically, you have a main file, a variables file, and an outputs file, so that anything that needs to be chained between each instance of that module can be passed in as variables, and the outputs of that module can be given out through the outputs file. In that way, you can use that piece of code in different ways and just passing the variables that you want to make. I don't think I'm going to wait for this to be done. This is taking a while. So here I get so what I did here was I created a module for the blog, and what that module here has is it has most of the same resources, but the things that we would like to change for this particular environment, we pass in as variables in this variable file. So this variable file, you can set the different types. The default type is string, but if the variable is a list or a map, you can pass those in the variable file. You can also set defaults here. So if I set a default for the main VPC to whatever our default VPC in our environment is, and I can decide not to pass that in to the module when I'm trying to use it, and it's just going to use the default. And so here in the handbag file, all I have to create is all I have to like write is the stuff that's specific to handbags or like specific to that particular type of blog in this case, or that product category. And so that's basically the gist of modules. And right now I chose to keep the sneakers blog as is, because moving that to the module would take like re-importing those resources, because it would it basically uses the names that you've given it here, like sneakers blog, to keep the state of the current state of the module. So this will basically, I guess, eventually finished. This would basically make more sense if I needed to add one more business group. So I also want to watch blog for whatever reason.
What's in the outputs file?
Right now, there's nothing in the outputs file, but the outputs file is basically anything like, so like here in the handbags file, I could have another module, another resource below here that uses like some output, like an ID or something from one of the resources that are created in here. And so the output file allows you like other things on this layer to be able to like access the stuff that was created within that module. So then it reduces like the amount of stuff you have to hard code, because like you can refer to like resources that are created in different areas. And so now I want to watch blog, and so all that takes is like changing the stuff that is specific to like watches. And here the use case is for different product categories. But another way we found this to be very useful is like when you try to create the same resource across environments. So you have a production environment, 2 staging environments, like a dev environment or whatever. The core infrastructure and the way things interact would be more or less the same. Perhaps you don't want like a bunch of large resources in your staging environment, because it's only 20 people that are going to be using that. So you pass in the types of instances that are used as variables, and that way you have that one piece of reusable code, and that can be used like across the different environments. And another cool thing about modules is that where it has the source there, it can be something within like this file directory, but it can also be like a GitHub URL. So you can have a module. There are a lot of open source modules that people have created to do different things, and so you can have a GitHub repo as that source, and it basically uses that to create your resources. And so that's pretty much it in terms of like what I have to show you. And so a few other things, like I said, read that book. It's a really good book. It was the first thing my friend showed me. I was like, I'm trying to get into DevOps, and I'm trying to learn about Terraform. What kind of things do I need to learn? He just sent me that book, and it was very helpful. Read the docs. I think yeah, I think that should go without saying, but I think HashiCorp and the open source community around Terraform has done a fairly good job about like keeping their docs and keeping them up to date, and making them clear and easy to read. And with that being said, there's a very helpful community around Terraform. If you create an issue on the GitHub page, someone will reply to it fairly quickly. And something that we're trying out, is pretty new to us also, is using inspec or like similar tools to like test infrastructure that's created with Terraform. So basically, the idea is that if you do something that changes that changes like the structure of your infrastructure or whatever, you can use tools like inspect to make sure like the things that you expect to happen still happen. So like if you like make changes to a security group, you can make sure, okay, this database can still be communicated through this application or whatever. And so that's something we're still learning about, and it's something that we're gonna try more, and it's something I think can be useful to a lot of teams out there. And so yeah, that's it for me. So questions, comments.
Do you run Google Plans or your plan?
Okay. So this is Terraform. So it goes to your state file and like looks at the state of the different resources and what other resources you're trying to create. So it tells you, okay, it's trying to create 8 things. It's trying to change one thing.
I'm sorry, is that a Terraform plan?
Yeah, Terraform plan. So it's basically showing you what you're going to do when you apply it. And another cool thing about it is you can save this Terraform plan into a file, and then use that file to run your apply, so that you know that the apply you're running is the exact as this plan that you've just created. Yeah.
Does the Terraform plan or whatever you're doing have handled the different logs connection to the database? They're all using the same database?
Well, right now, the way it's created, they're not. But if you wanted all of them to use the same database, then that database would be treated similar to like this VPC, for example. And then like this VPC resources are out here, and then each one has them passed in as like the VPC named main, and then it gets those IDs from there.
Each
So
log spins up its own
database. So the idea is that for each one to be like a self-contained thing.
But if you wanted to maybe have a module be usable by multiple projects, perhaps even across repos with a mix of outputs and the source reference, you could do that.
Yeah. And like that's another way I've seen people use modules. It's like not really around business domains. It's more around certain resources that are used together. Let's say you have like what's it called? A database, some like a subnet group that you create or whatever, and then maybe some CloudWatch logs that you're always going to create those things together. You can make that into a module, and then like 20 services or however many services that are going to use like databases that are going to use can use that module. And you know that you have that standard around that.
Is there any like safety measures around tearing down infrastructure? One of the things I've seen with CloudFormation is you create a resource as a table or an S3 bucket. Your deploy fails, you have to tear it down. All your data in the bucket or the table gets destroyed. Being able to like deploy something and then say like it can be deployed but it can't be torn down. Is that a thing? Or are there any safety measures around that?
I do not know like enough about it.
Can you reuse any of your like AWS Terraform config on another service provider like Google Cloud or anything, or is it like a whole rewrite?
It's usually a rewrite because they're resources. Like each of these things is considered a resource, and in the docs there are resources. These resources are specific to AWS. Then there are Google resources. They're like Cloudflare resources for like different providers. They have like, their own resources and their own like naming standards, that kind of stuff.
When you first started using it, you already had all this infrastructure set up. How did you get it kickstarted? Did you have to write the current infrastructure, or was there a way to just spit out what you currently have into Terraform files?
A combination of both. Well, so you basically have to still write the configuration, but rather than like recreating it, you can import. You can say, okay, this like this VPC is, you can Terraform import a VPC that already exists, and like so it saves that state as that VPC being like whatever VPC it is in your AWS console.
There are skeleton templates that Terraform
Provides for you for this, or you got to write them all here?
The Terraform docs have like a lot of templates for like basic things that people tend to do. Like this is the way you create a VPC with like pretty standard settings or whatever. So yeah, so they're the docs are great.
I heard that like when you deploy, always tear some of your infrastructure down. Is that, I think that might be related to the question you were asked earlier. Is that true?
No, it doesn't bother with anything that is not within the state file. So whatever you have in your console that is not going to be affected by like the Terraform in the state file. It only cares about what is currently in your, like what it currently has saved as in state in that S3 bucket. And so first of all, it doesn't care about anything that is in your console at that point. Yeah.
Suppose we want to do something very simple like upgrade our T2 instance to say extra large, medium to extra large.
So like let me go in here. I want to do this. Let's say what is another size of there's a medium, right? And if I run a Terraform plan again, so here, at the top here is gonna show. It's trying to change the sneakers blog, and it's trying to change the instance class from a T2 micro to a.
you put it on the screen there.
Oh, my bad.
All right.
It's gonna change the instance class at the top there from a T2 micro to a T2 medium, and so like these are other things that we haven't run. But if everything else was already existing, then all it would do would be like try to change that instance class from a T2 micro to a T2 medium. And depending on the type of change it's making, similar to the way AWS resources work in general, some changes are gonna like bring down whatever for the amount of time that the change is happening.
Is there like post-deploy hooks or scripts that you can run either before or after you deploy the system out or changes out? So like an example might be my stack includes DynamoDB table for which I've got a backup. I want to seed the table with with data that I've got.
Yeah.
Once it's deployed, is there like a way to like hook into a script that will go and
Yeah, so
there
there are integrations for, I know there are integrations for like Ansible, like running Ansible scripts that way. One thing we're using is Rambler. So basically, after setting up the database, running like the migrations on that. So yeah, there is like that is possible, and that like, there are several ways to do that. Yeah.
What about using
Terraform in a team context. And the only reason I'm asking that is because I saw that there's a future talk about trying to use Terraform in a team environment. So I don't know if you were
Yeah, so I use Terraform with these guys. So it's the cool thing about it is like the state is stored in that S3 bucket, not locally. It's not on your machine or whatever. So it's basically making sure you have like the most up-to-date version, like from version control running on your machine or like on your machine, and then based on that, it's easy to manage. Okay, this is what we have based in the. This is what the state is in the file in S3, and any change I'm making is gonna like update that. So I think the state in the S3 bucket is usually the main source of truth. One thing I would say to avoid is like half-assing Terraform. So like creating things in Terraform, and then when it gets difficult, adding more stuff in the console, because then it gets messy and it's more difficult to deal with. Go ahead.
Yeah, I guess two things real quick. First, forgive me if you said this, but how is it actually running?
How?
Like how is it? Because I know you said the files are S3 or wherever you want.
Yeah.
Is it like on your machine?
Yeah. So the Terraform is actually running on my machine.
Okay, so like let's say I want to set up a new dev instance in AWS.
Yeah.
Would I scan like a Terraform, like a EKS or ECS or instance specifically for Terraform?
No. Oh well, right now I'm just running it. Like I'm running the commands on my machine, but then it's creating all the instances and stuff in AWS.
Okay.
Isn't it like a wrapper around the SDK, or is it
Yes, it uses the AWS CLI, like the AWS API. Yeah.
I see.
Yeah.
Great. Okay. And then just secondly, is there like a marketplace for modules that people make? Is there like a approved?
I do not know. Does anyone know?
Yeah, there's a lot online if you just Google it. Like, I worked at a place and we cloned a bunch of repos, and we had Terraform for Redis, MySQL. Like we terraformed every piece of infrastructure we could possibly create. And then it was ours. Like we had a standard Redis that everyone had to use.
Yeah, I just mean like let's say I upload something to GitHub from Terraform, and at the end of it I have a little remove everything that you have. What I'm saying is there any service or and anywhere you can put it where someone checks it?
Someone does like an RMRF on your whole thing. Yeah. So no, just run plan first. I guess it's
yeah. Just be careful.
Fair enough, thank you.
Have you had problems with some other team member modifying a module of yours, and then, that's what I was sort of wondering about, coordination and issues like that.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is that's like a communication problem.
Right.
And so it's less to do with Terraform and more to do with like, okay, our team, you need to be able to like talk to the people you're working with about, okay, this is what we're doing, and have like a plan. Your team should have a plan of what you intend to do, so that like no one member of the team is surprised about the changes that happen.
Do you remember if the book gets into like repo organization for that kind of stuff?
Yes, it does. Like he has his views on how you should organize repos, mostly around modules also. Yeah.
More of a big picture question. It might be in two parts. What does StockX do?
I think any of these guys will be able to explain that better than me. But but StockX it's a stock market of things. That's the tagline, right?
Yeah,
like
I think I saw a presentation at an IBM event about the company. It's like a stock market for consumer.
yeah, for consumer
Okay,
goods,
so
exactly.
I just wanted to confirm that. So the second part of my question is there something about that business model that gravitates you towards Amazon or Terraform technology, like high frequency trading, or is there some?
It's basically around being able to scale a business as fast as possible. Because the rate we're growing, we just found it necessary to like use tools like this that allow us to work faster. Because there's so much that we have to do, like we've had to do in such a short amount of time, and like being able to work in bigger, like being able to work in bigger teams, and with like a lot more developers on your team, requires tools like this that make it easier to like quickly create new environments, to deploy stuff. That kind of stuff is what has made infrastructure as code and Terraform in particular attractive to us.
So, kind of building on the whole disappearing infrastructure thing, you mentioned inspec. Is there any way to do some sort of continuous integration where you write a test that says, don't delete all of this code or all of this infrastructure, and like, and then like reject a Terraform like plan or a Terraform, I forget whatever the do command is, but.
I'm fairly sure that it is. I haven't
Okay.
used it myself.
Like unit tests for.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah, that's what inspect, kind of what inspect does. But I haven't like used it myself to tell you, oh, this is how well it works. So, and yeah. Any more questions? All right, cool. Yeah, so that's it. One more thing, if you want to come write Terraform with me, we're hiring. StockX. Yeah, so yeah, cool. Thanks for listening. And